The chandeliers of the Eko Atlantic Grand Pavilion glimmered like captured stars, their light scattering across the sea of silk gowns and tuxedos. Lagos's elite moved through the ballroom in calculated grace. Politicians, tycoons, heirs, each one pretending the night was about celebration, not power. Pearl Anderson stood near the marble staircase, her pulse drumming beneath layers of silken nerves. The gown she wore was borrowed, champagne gold, floor-length, heavy with hand-stitched crystals. It was far too elegant for her modest life as an art curator. Yet tonight, she wasn't Pearl. She was Clarissa Blake, the governor's daughter. Her best friend, her polar opposite. The lie felt suffocating already. Only hours ago, Clarissa had fallen apart in tears in her dressing suite at the hotel. "I can't do this, Pearl. I can't marry him, not a man I've never met. My father doesn't care what I want. You have to help me." Pearl had shaken her head, terrified. "Clarissa, this isn't some rehearsal dinner. This is an official introduction. You can't send me instead." "You're the only one who could pull it off," Clarissa had begged. "Please, just meet him, smile, buy me a day to think." And because she'd always been the one to clean up Clarissa's chaos, Pearl agreed. 15 minutes, she told herself. Just enough time for Clarissa to vanish quietly to her mother's in Ikoyi. Just enough time to prevent a political scandal. Now, surrounded by chandeliers, cameras, and power, Pearl felt the weight of every wrong decision pressing down on her borrowed name. "Miss Blake?" a voice said behind her. Pearl turned, and time stopped. Kingston Maclima was not the type of man anyone could prepare for. He was taller than rumor suggested, dressed in a black tuxedo cut to precision, his posture controlled, his expression unreadable. The billionaire heir of Maclima Holdings, Lagos' most powerful private conglomerate, looked more like a myth sculpted from discipline than a man born of it. Pearl tried not to stare, but her heart betrayed her. He extended his hand. "Kingston." She forced a polite smile. "Clarissa Blake." The name slipped off her tongue like a foreign word. His handshake was firm, strong, but not crushing. "You're quieter than I expected." "I wasn't aware you had expectations," she replied carefully. "I always do," he said. The orchestra began a slow waltz. Kingston gestured to the dance floor. "One dance. Cameras love a narrative." Her instinct screamed no, but the crowd watched. The governor's aides, journalists, Lagos' wealthiest families. So she nodded. He led her to the center of the room. The lights dimmed, the music swelled. Every step felt rehearsed by destiny. "You don't seem like the others," he murmured as they moved. "The others?" "The women bred for politics, polished, calculated." His gaze lingered on her face. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." She met his eyes for a second too long. "You're very observant." "It's necessary," he said. "Observation keeps a man alive." "Alive?" she echoed. "In business," he clarified. "And in rooms like this." Her smile faltered. "You sound like someone who doesn't trust easily." "I don't," he said simply. "Do you?" Pearl hesitated, then whispered, "Only those who give me reason." Something in his expression shifted, curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. "You're not what I expected," Kingston said again, his voice lower this time, meant only for her. "Maybe that's a good thing." The waltz ended, cameras flashed, applause rippled through the ballroom as Kingston raised his glass. "To alliances," he said. "To alliances," she echoed, forcing a smile. Then he turned slightly toward the press area and added, loud enough for the microphones, "To my future wife, Miss Clarissa Blake." The room erupted in cheers. Pearl's heart stopped. "Did he just?" Reporters surged forward, flashes exploding. The governor beamed from across the room, unaware that his daughter had fled hours ago. The crowd encircled them, congratulating, clapping, assuming. Kingston's hand remained firm on her back as he leaned close. "Now the deal is sealed," he murmured. "The deal?" she repeated faintly. "Marriage is business in this city, Miss Blake," he said. "We just became Lagos's most profitable merger." Her pulse hammered. She'd meant to pretend for minutes. Instead, she'd just been engaged, publicly, to one of the most powerful men in Nigeria. When the music resumed, she excused herself under the pretense of getting fresh air. She hurried toward the terrace, her hands trembling. The Lagos night was alive, waves crashing against the seawall, the hum of traffic, the scent of salt and jasmine drifting from the gardens. She gripped the railing, fighting for breath. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A message from Clarissa. "Pearl, something's gone wrong. I'm leaving tonight for London. Please, whatever happens, don't tell anyone yet. Please. I'll explain later." Her knees nearly gave out. "Running already?" She spun around. Kingston stood in the doorway, jacket off, bow tie undone, that quiet authority still clinging to him. "I needed air," she managed. He studied her. "You're nervous. You just announced our engagement to the entire country." "You're welcome," he said dryly. She stared at him. "You don't even know me." "Not yet," he admitted, "but I know a good partnership when I see one." "Is that what this is? A partnership?" "Every marriage in our world is." He stepped closer, his voice soft but deliberate. "You intrigue me, Miss Blake. You're not like them, and that's either your greatest strength or your greatest lie." Pearl's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He tilted his head slightly. "You carry yourself like someone pretending to fit in. I've seen that look before. In mirrors." Her chest tightened. "Maybe you see what you want to see." "Maybe," he said, "but I intend to find out." She forced a laugh. "And if I'm not what you expect, then Lagos will watch me marry a mystery," he said, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. "And I don't mind mystery." The sound of the orchestra floated out again, mingling with the sea breeze. "You don't believe in love, do you?" she asked quietly. He looked at her for a long time. "Love is a luxury. Loyalty is the real currency. Then what do you want from me?" He stepped back, hands in his pockets, eyes unreadable. "For tonight, just your honesty." She swallowed hard. "That might be the one thing I can't give you." "Then we're already even," he said, turning toward the ballroom. "I'm not sure I have any left to give either." He disappeared into the crowd. Pearl stood frozen under the soft glow of the chandeliers spilling through the glass doors, the echo of his words hanging between the city and the sea. Somewhere inside, the orchestra changed songs and the cameras flashed again. And in that moment, she understood. She wasn't just standing in for Clarissa anymore. She just stepped into a life that could never again be returned. By sunrise, Lagos was obsessed. Every news outlet carried the same headline, the same photograph, the same radiant lie. Kingston Maclima engaged to governor's daughter. Pearl Anderson, still trapped behind the name Clarissa Blake, sat on the edge of her bed in Clarissa's luxury apartment, staring blankly at the morning news. Her image, smiling, graceful, utterly convincing, flashed across the screen. Commentators gushed over her poise. Fashion blogs dissected her gown. Even the governor's press office had released a congratulatory statement. It should have been thrilling. It was suffocating. Her phone buzzed for the 100th time. This time it wasn't a journalist. It was Clarissa. "Leaving for London today. Please, Pearl, just keep up the act until I can figure things out. I promise I'll fix it. Don't let him suspect anything. Please." Pearl read the message twice, her stomach knotting. Her best friend had disappeared, and she was now the face of a powerful engagement she'd never agreed to. A knock sounded at the door. Before she could answer, a man in a dark suit stepped inside. "Good morning, Miss Blake," he said crisply. "Mr. Maclima requests your presence." She blinked. "Requests?" He smiled politely. "Insists." The ride to Maclima Tower was silent, save for the low hum of traffic and the faint buzz of paparazzi drones overhead. The city outside blurred past, Victoria Island's skyline reflecting in the lagoon like molten gold. Inside the glass tower, everything gleamed. Black marble floors, sleek white orchids, and walls of art that looked priceless. She followed the assistant to a private elevator that opened directly into Kingston's penthouse office. Anam, he was waiting by the window, the city stretching endlessly behind him. His tailored suit was perfect, but his sleeves were rolled up, exposing strong forearms. He looked less like a businessman and more like a man who built empires with his bare hands. "Miss Blake," he greeted, his voice smooth but carrying weight. "Mr. Maclima," she said softly, trying to sound composed. "You're difficult to reach," he said, turning toward her. "I don't enjoy chasing my fiancé across the city." Her pulse jumped. It wasn't intentional. Everything's been overwhelming." "I imagine it would be." He stepped closer, his eyes scanning her face. "The governor's daughter, hiding in her apartment after a single evening in the spotlight. It doesn't fit your reputation." "My reputation?" "Bold, outspoken, trained for politics," he said evenly. "But the woman I met last night didn't sound rehearsed. She sounded real." Pearl swallowed. "Maybe I'm different in private." "Maybe." His tone softened, though suspicion flickered behind his calm exterior. "You seem almost too genuine for this world." She forced a smile. "That's hardly a flaw." "No," he said quietly. "It's a warning." He gestured to the glass table where 2 cups of coffee waited. "Sit." She obeyed, trying to keep her hands from trembling. "Do you know why I agreed to this marriage?" he asked. "Because it benefits your company?" she guessed. He smirked faintly. "Because it benefits everyone, except me. That was the point." Pearl frowned. "You don't sound like a man who wants to get married." "I don't," he said simply. "But loyalty demands sacrifice. Your father's connections mean stability for my international projects. It's a trade, status for trust." Her throat tightened. "My father, the real Clarissa's father." The lie twisted deeper. "And what about me?" she asked quietly. "You?" He leaned forward slightly. "You're the variable I didn't expect." She looked away, unsure how to respond. He studied her for a long moment, then said, "When I first saw you at the gala, you looked terrified. But then you smiled. It wasn't polished. It wasn't calculated. It was honest. I haven't seen that in years." Her chest ached. "You sound disappointed that I'm human." "On the contrary," Kingston said, his voice softening. "It's the first reason I've had to look twice at anyone." Their eyes met. The air between them grew thick, charged. She broke the tension by asking, "What happens now?" "Now," he said, standing, "we control the narrative. A press release goes out tomorrow morning. Engagement confirmed. Wedding plans in progress. The city believes what we tell them." "And if I don't agree?" He smiled faintly. "Then I'll convince you." "You mean force me?" "I don't force," he said, stepping closer. "I persuade. There's a difference." "Not much," she whispered. His gaze flicked down to her trembling hands. "You're shaking." "I'm fine." "You're lying," he said softly. Pearl stood abruptly, needing space. "I should go." He caught her wrist, not roughly, but with enough strength to stop her. "Look at me." She did. "I'm not your enemy," he said, "no matter what your father believes about me. Whatever this arrangement becomes, I won't hurt you. You have my word." She wanted to believe him. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, but guilt gnawed at her. The knowledge that she was deceiving him with every word, every glance. "I don't think you realize the kind of storm you've started," she said quietly. He released her hand. "I've lived through worse storms." She hesitated at the door. "You think you know me, Kingston, but you don't." He smiled faintly. "Not yet, but I will." Her breath hitched. "You sound very sure of yourself." "I am," he said, "because every instinct I have tells me that you're exactly where you're meant to be." She left without replying, the weight of his words echoing in her mind. Outside, Lagos buzzed with noise and light. Reporters camped outside her apartment, shouting questions. She slipped through a side entrance, ducking cameras, her heart pounding. Inside, silence greeted her, a silence thick with deception. She sank onto the couch, buried her face in her hands, and whispered, "What have I done?" Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Clarissa. Just 1 week, Pearl. After that, I'll fix everything. I promise. Pearl stared at the screen, tears filling her eyes. The problem wasn't surviving the lie for 1 week. It was surviving Kingston Maclima, his attention, his charm, his quiet, commanding presence, without losing herself completely. For the first time, she realized this wasn't a simple masquerade anymore. It was a fire, and she was already burning. The wedding was as swift as it was spectacular. A small, elegant ceremony in the private gardens of Maclima Tower, 20 guests, a handful of cameras, and an ocean of lies. The papers called it the Union of the Year. The truth was far simpler. A stranger wearing another woman's name had just married Lagos's most powerful man. Pearl stood beside Kingston, beneath a glass canopy framed by orchids and fairy lights, repeating vows that didn't belong to her. His hand was warm when he slid the ring into her finger, his voice steady when he said, "I take you, Clarissa." She forced a smile as applause rippled through the night. By morning, she was Mrs. Kingston Maclima, on paper at least. The headlines flooded in. The governor's daughter marries the Maclima empire. Photos of her smile, perfectly rehearsed, spread like wildfire. Lagos had a new royal couple, the crown of ambition and elegance. But inside, she felt hollow. Their new home was breathtaking, a penthouse high above Eko Atlantic, all glass and marble, overlooking the lagoon. Every surface gleamed, every flower seemed placed by an artist's hand. It was beautiful, and it felt nothing like home. Kingston, for all his authority, treated her with a formality that unnerved her. He wasn't cold exactly, he was distant, careful, as though she were a contract, not a wife. Days passed in quiet routines. He rose early, worked late, spoke little. When he did, his words were precise, like chess moves. One evening, she found him on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear, the wind tugging at his shirt. His tone was clipped. "Delay the Singapore deal. I don't negotiate with panic." He ended the call, exhaled, then noticed her. "Couldn't sleep?" "Too quiet," she said. "Most people find quiet relaxing." "I find it suspicious," she murmured, and for the first time in days, he smiled. He gestured toward the view. "Do you like it?" "It's beautiful," she admitted, "but it doesn't feel real." "Reality is overrated," he said. "People like us live on perception." "I'm not sure I like that." He studied her. "You're honest to a fault, Clarissa." Her chest tightened at the name. Clarissa. Each time he said it, it cut a little deeper. "I'm not sure honesty is welcome in your world," she replied quietly. "Maybe that's why I keep you around." Their eyes met, and for the briefest moment, something unspoken flickered between them. The next week blurred into media appearances, charity events, and endless photographs. Every smile was a lie, every headline another layer of guilt. Yet behind the public facade, something shifted. Kingston began to let his armor slip small moments at first. A genuine laugh when she teased him about his schedule. A quiet glance that lingered too long. He wasn't just the empire anymore. He was a man. One morning she found him in his office, sleeves rolled up, frustration clouding his usually calm features. "Another board meeting?" she asked gently. "Investors," he said, rubbing his temples. "They think marriage will make me relatable." She smiled faintly. "It's working." "No." He looked up, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Is it?" "People see what they want to see," she said. "You give them a story, they'll buy it." His gaze softened. "And what story should I give you, Mrs. Maclima?" She froze. The title sounded strange, dangerous. "One where I can still recognize myself," she said. For a moment, neither spoke. Then quietly he said, "You might be the first person who's ever looked at me and seen a person instead of a prophet. You make it difficult not to," she murmured. That night, their silence was different, heavier, alive. He invited her to dinner in the private rooftop garden, lit by string lights and the soft rhythm of waves below. She wore a deep emerald gown. He poured her wine himself. The city glittered like 1,000 whispered secrets around them. "You're not like I expected," he said at last. "I thought this arrangement would be tedious, political. But you—" "I what?" she asked, her voice barely above the music. "You unsettle me." Pearl's heart fluttered. "Is that good or bad?" "Both," he admitted. She smiled faintly. "That's honest." "I try," he said, raising his glass. "To honesty, then, even when it hurts." They clinked glasses. She met his gaze, and in that single moment, she forgot the name she wore. She forgot the lie. But reality was patient. It always waited. Later that night, she wandered into his study. The shelves were lined with business journals, leadership books, framed awards. But one photo stood out: a younger Kingston, arm around a laughing teenage girl with dark curls. He appeared beside her. "My sister," he said softly. "Isla. She's studying abroad now." "She looks happy." "She is," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. "She's the only reason I still believe in good things." Pearl glanced at him. "You don't seem like someone who believes in much." He met her eyes. "You'd be surprised." Their closeness was electric, a gravity she couldn't resist. But the moment shattered when her phone buzzed on the desk. A message flashed from Clarissa. "Still in London. Lay low. Don't say anything you'll regret." Pearl's breath caught. Kingston's eyes narrowed. "Everything all right?" She quickly turned the phone face down. "Just a friend." He nodded, though his jaw tightened slightly. "You don't have many of those here, do you?" She hesitated. "No." "Then maybe start with me." Her pulse stumbled. "You don't even trust people." "I trust actions, not words," he said. "But you haven't run yet." She managed a small smile. "Maybe I'm still trying to figure you out." "Good luck," he said quietly. "Even I haven't managed that." The days that followed blurred into an unexpected rhythm: morning briefings, shared breakfasts, evenings filled with awkward laughter and gentle silences. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her, not with suspicion, but with something she couldn't name. A hunger for truth, perhaps. Or maybe for something neither of them understood yet. And though the lie still sat between them like a ticking bomb, Pearl couldn't ignore the warmth blooming in her chest. Because for all his power and control, Kingston Maclima looked at her not like a pawn in his empire, but like a puzzle he actually wanted to solve. The morning began like every other, sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows, the gentle hum of Lagos traffic below, and the faint aroma of Kingston's coffee filling the penthouse. But before the hour ended, the illusion of perfection shattered. Pearl woke to the distant buzz of her phone, vibrating endlessly against the marble nightstand. She groaned softly, reaching for it, her body still heavy from sleep. But one glance at the screen turned her veins to ice. "Breaking news. Mystery woman married to Kingston Maclima, not the governor's daughter." Her hand trembled. Beneath the headline was a photo of her and Kingston at the charity gala, smiling beneath chandeliers. Beside it, another photo, Clarissa Blake, the real one, stepping off a plane in London, surrounded by cameras. Pearl's breath caught, her throat burned. "No, no, no, no." The phone slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the sheets. Panic clawed up her chest. How did they find out? Who told them? "Clarissa?" Kingston's voice came from the doorway. Pearl froze. He was still in his crisp morning suit, tie loosened, coffee cup in hand, but when he saw her pale face and the phone on the bed, the calm drained from his expression. "What's wrong?" Her voice failed her. She could only stare at him, the words trapped behind 1,000 fears. He stepped closer, frowning. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She swallowed hard, her heartbeat a violent drum. "Kingston, there's something—" His phone buzzed. He picked it up before she could stop him. The same headline glared from the screen. For a moment, time stopped. The air thickened, heavy with disbelief. Kingston read the headline once, twice, then lowered the phone slowly. "Tell me this isn't true." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please, just listen. Tell me," he repeated, his tone sharper. She stood, trembling. My name isn't Clarissa Blake. Silence. It was the kind of silence that broke things. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at her as though the world had tilted off its axis. What did you just say? His voice was quiet now, dangerously quiet. I'm Pearl Anderson, she whispered. Clarissa's best friend. She panicked before the engagement meeting. She begged me to stand in for her, just for one night. I never meant for it to go this far. His eyes darkened, gray turning almost silver. You took her place. It was supposed to be temporary. I wanted to tell you, Kingston. I tried. When? He snapped, his composure unraveling. Before or after you married me under her name? Before or after you let me parade you across every newspaper as the governor's daughter? Please, she begged, voice cracking. You have to understand. I didn't do this for fame or money. I was protecting her. Protecting her? He repeated, a bitter laugh escaping. You humiliated me before the entire country, and you call it protection? She stepped forward. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Clarissa was supposed to come back before the wedding. But she didn't, he said coldly, and you enjoyed playing the part too much to stop. The accusations sliced through her. That's not true. He turned away, pacing to the window. The city glittered below, oblivious to the chaos exploding above it. His reflection in the glass looked like a man carved from anger. Do you have any idea what this means? He said finally. The board will demand answers. Investors will pull funding. My company, my name, is in every headline for the worst possible reason. I'll take the blame, she said quickly. I'll tell the press it was all me. He turned, eyes hard. You think that saves me? They'll call me a fool, a man deceived by a stranger in his own house. Her tears fell freely now. I love you, Kingston. Don't, he said sharply. Don't you dare use that word. It's true, she whispered. He shook his head. You don't get to claim love after building it on lies. The intercom beeped suddenly, breaking the tense silence. Isla's voice crackled through, anxious. King, the media's outside. They've surrounded the gates. There are drones flying over the tower. Everyone's asking for a statement. Kingston's tone was ice. No one comes in. No one leaves. But the board, I said no one. He ended the call and faced Pearl again. I swear I never wanted to hurt you, she said through tears. You did, he replied, voice low but seething. You lied to me, to my family, to the entire city. You made a fool out of me. And for what? Friendship? She reached for him, desperate. Kingston, please. He stepped back. Don't touch me. Her arms dropped. I would have chosen you, he said suddenly, his voice breaking in the middle. If you'd told me the truth, I would have chosen you anyway. Do you understand that? Her breath caught. But you didn't give me that choice, he finished. You took it away. Pearl covered her face, sobbing quietly. The man who had once looked at her with tenderness now stared at her like a stranger. Pack your things, he said finally. Kingston. Now. She didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. She packed her clothes with trembling hands while he stood at the window, unmoving. When she reached the doorway, she paused. I know you hate me, she said softly, but one day you'll understand why I did it. He didn't turn. I already understand, he said. You lied because it was easier than being brave. The words cut deep, but she nodded, accepting them. As she left, flashes from the paparazzi exploded like lightning outside the tower. Reporters shouted her name, her real one now. Pearl Anderson. Pearl, is it true you impersonated the governor's daughter? She slipped into a waiting car, eyes blurred with tears. The city she had once loved now looked like a battlefield of lights and noise. Upstairs, Kingston watched her leave from the balcony, jaw tight, hands clenched. His sister entered quietly. King, Isla said gently, the press is out of control. Should I? Handle it, he said, voice hollow. Isla hesitated. Was it true? He didn't answer. He just stared at the city, at the thousands of lights flickering like judgment. When the door finally closed behind her, Kingston pressed his palms against the glass, his reflection fractured by tears he refused to shed. He'd built an empire on control, precision, power. But love, he realized now, had never obeyed his rules. And the one woman he'd let inside had just burned his world to the ground. The chandeliers of the Eko Atlantic Convention Center shimmered brighter than ever, refracting light across the marble floors and mirrored pillars. Lagos's elite gathered in their glittering best, politicians, CEOs, and socialites, each waiting to witness the event that had dominated headlines all week, the Maclima Foundation's annual gala. For 6 months, Pearl Anderson had vanished from the public eye. The woman once called the imposter bride had retreated into silence, rebuilding her life from the ashes of humiliation. Now, as she stepped through the grand glass doors of the ballroom, her head held high, silence rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to her. She was radiant, no longer the nervous stand-in, but a woman transformed. Her emerald gown shimmered with understated grace, hugging her tall frame, her curls falling freely down her shoulders. Every camera turned her way, every whisper echoing her name. "Isn't that her?" someone murmured. "The fake Clarissa?" "No, that's Pearl Anderson now, the founder of the Anderson Art Trust." Pearl moved through the murmurs like water through fire. The humiliation that once would have broken her now only burned brighter into confidence. She wasn't here for revenge or validation. She was here for purpose. Her art trust, born from her pain, had grown into one of Lagos's most respected cultural charities, funding young artists in Atagunle and Victoria Island, giving them platforms she once only dreamed of. Tonight, her foundation had been invited to collaborate with the Maclima Foundation for a new project supporting creative youth. It was poetic and cruel, because this event, the very heart of her new beginning, was also his. Kingston Maclima stood at the far end of the ballroom, surrounded by board members and journalists, tall and composed in a black tuxedo. 6 months had changed him too. The ruthless gleam in his eyes had dimmed into something quieter, wiser. His hair was slightly longer, his posture less rigid. But when their eyes met across the room, everything else disappeared. The orchestra faded, the crowd blurred. Only the space between them mattered. Pearl's breath caught. She hadn't seen him since that morning she'd left his penthouse with a heart in pieces. And yet, here he was, the man who'd once broken her and somehow still made her heart race. "Miss Anderson," a voice greeted beside her, snapping her out of her daze. It was Eleanor Kingston's chief of staff, elegant and poised as ever. "On behalf of Mr. Maclima, thank you for coming. The foundation is honored by your collaboration." "Thank you, Eleanor," Pearl said evenly. "I'm honored to be here." "Would you like to speak with him before the press conference?" Eleanor asked cautiously, her tone holding unspoken tension. Pearl hesitated, glancing toward Kingston. "If he wishes." Eleanor nodded. "He does." Moments later, Pearl stood near the terrace doors, watching the lagoon shimmer under the night sky. Footsteps approached. She didn't turn until she heard his voice. "Pearl." The sound of her name in his voice, her real name, was almost too much. She turned slowly. "Kingston." He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, quietly, "You came." "I was invited, and you accepted," he said softly. "That's more than I deserve." Pearl's tone stayed calm, though her pulse fluttered. "This isn't about you. It's about the partnership between our foundations." "Of course," he said, though his eyes betrayed him. "But thank you anyway." "For what?" "For not disappearing completely." Pearl's breath trembled. "You made that easy. The world made sure I couldn't." He nodded slightly, pain flickering through his composure. "I know. I've read every headline since." "Good," she said quietly. "Then you know what it's like to be judged by a truth no one understands." He exhaled. Pearl, I came here tonight not as a CEO, not as a Maclima, but as a man who owes you more than an apology. Before she could respond, the host's voice echoed from the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kingston Maclima to the podium. He hesitated, eyes on her. Stay, he whispered. Please. Pearl didn't move as he walked to the stage. The ballroom dimmed, cameras flashing like lightning. Kingston stood behind the glass podium, the city skyline glittering behind him. For a moment, he simply looked at the audience, calm, controlled, almost too composed. Then his voice came, steady but softer than anyone had ever heard it. 6 months ago, he began, I made a mistake that destroyed more than my reputation. It destroyed something I didn't realize I valued until it was gone. Whispers rippled across the crowd. I let pride dictate my judgment, he continued. I built walls so high around myself that I forgot what humanity looked like. And when I finally found someone who reminded me, someone who challenged me, inspired me, changed me, I let the world convince me she was nothing but a scandal. The room fell utterly silent. Kingston looked toward Pearl, his voice trembling slightly. Pearl Anderson taught me what truth feels like, what forgiveness looks like, what love costs when you take it for granted. And tonight, I want Lagos to hear this. I don't regret loving her. I only regret losing her. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed wildly. Pearl froze, emotion flooding her chest. She didn't steal a crown, Kingston said, voice firm now. She taught me what it means to build an empire on something real. Applause erupted, hesitant at first, then growing until the ballroom shook with it. He stepped down from the podium, walked straight toward her, and stopped just short of her hand. I'm not asking for another chance, he said quietly, eyes glistening. I just needed you to know that, for once, the world's not hearing a lie from me. Tears pricked her eyes, but she smiled faintly. You always did know how to make an apology feel like a headline. He chuckled softly, relief flickering through his exhaustion. Did it work? Maybe, she whispered. The applause still echoed around them as he extended his hand. Dance with me, just one more time. She hesitated, but then the orchestra began a slow, wistful waltz, the same one from the night they met. Pearl placed her hand in his, and the world fell away. For a few precious minutes, there were no titles, no lies, no headlines. Just two souls who had burned and survived. When the music faded, Kingston leaned close, his voice barely audible. You once said you hated pretending. I still do, she whispered back. Good, he said, because this time it's real. And for the first time since everything fell apart, Pearl allowed herself to believe it might be. Morning sunlight brushed the Lagos skyline, turning the lagoon into liquid gold. On the penthouse balcony of Maclima Tower, Pearl Anderson Maclima stood barefoot, coffee warming her palms. Below, the city pulsed with life. Boats gliding across the water, horns echoing from distant bridges. The rhythm of a place that had once judged her and now whispered her name with respect. Beside her lay a folded newspaper. Pearl Anderson Maclima launches Art Education Initiative. She smiled. The scandal that once burned her had become the foundation of something greater. Strong arms slipped around her waist. You're awake early, Kingston murmured against her hair. Habit, she said softly. The city's too alive to sleep through. He kissed her shoulder, voice low. It's different now. It's us, she replied. We finally stopped fighting the world and started building in it. A year had passed since the night of the Eko Atlantic gala, since his public apology turned mockery into redemption. Forgiveness hadn't come overnight. It had taken long talks, slow trust, and quieter days where love grew without an audience. Inside, their penthouse no longer felt like a museum. Sunlight spilled over vibrant canvases from young Lagos artists, pieces funded by her new foundation, the Anderson Art Trust. What once was cold marble now breathed color and life. Kingston leaned on the doorway, watching her move through the space. You've turned my fortress into an art studio. She grinned. Into a home. He smiled faintly. Same thing when it's with you. They ate breakfast together. Fruit, croissants, laughter. The kind of morning they used to think they didn't deserve. I have a meeting at 10, he said, glancing at his watch. And I have an interview at 11, she replied. We're becoming a power couple. Correction, he teased. You're the power. I'm just smart enough to keep up. The elevator chimed, and Isla breezed in with flowers and news. Mum's threatening to visit, she said. Apparently you two work too much. Kingston groaned. We'll hide in Eko Atlantic until she leaves. Pearl laughed, hugging Isla. Tell her to come. This house could use her energy. When Isla left, the silence that followed felt soft, familiar. Remember when quiet used to scare you? Kingston asked. Pearl nodded. Now it feels earned. Later at the Eko Art Museum, cameras flashed as Pearl stepped out of their car. But this time, the crowd wasn't shouting in accusations. It was applause. Her speech to unveil the Lagos Creative Youth Program was confident, calm, and full of heart. Art saved me, she told them. Not the kind you frame, but the kind that rebuilds your life from the ruins of shame and fear. This foundation is for everyone who's ever been mislabeled or misunderstood. We can't rewrite our beginnings, but we can paint our endings. The room erupted in cheers. Kingston, watching from the sidelines, felt something rare. Peace. That evening, they dined on the balcony as fireworks bloomed above the lagoon, gold and emeralds scattering over the waves. Pearl leaned back in her chair, smiling at the spectacle. Do you realize, she said, a year ago, the same sky saw me fall apart? He took her hand, and now it's watching you shine. She turned toward him, eyes soft. I never wanted a crown. You didn't need one, he said. You became it. They sat in silence, the city glowing beneath them. Pearl exhaled slowly. Do you ever think about Clarissa? Sometimes, he admitted, mostly to thank her for vanishing. Pearl laughed quietly. She gave us the wrong beginning, but the right ending. He brushed a curl from her face, his touch gentle. You turned my empire into something human, and you gave my heart a place to belong, she whispered. Fireworks shimmered one last time, painting the night with streaks of light that reflected in her eyes. Do you still think love is a risk? She asked. He smiled. Only when it's not real. Ours survived the truth. It'll survive anything. She leaned into him as the final burst of color faded into the dark sky. Below them, Lagos kept moving, vibrant, forgiving, alive. The woman once called the imposter bride now stood as its queen, not of wealth or scandal, but of grace. And when Kingston kissed her, slow and certain, Pearl knew this wasn't just the end of their story. It was the masterpiece they'd created together,